The Happiness of Taylor, The Taylor Sanford Story, by John Alpha. On October 31st, 2023, Chicago Police Department received the following phone call at 4:35 p.m.
"My mother's dead,"
announced the despondent voice of Taylor Sanford.
"Your mother's dead?"
asked the dispatcher.
"How do you know? Can you give me more information?" "Because she's been stabbed 100 times and is bleeding everywhere."
There was a slight laugh barely hidden in Taylor's response. Detective Carl Herring, tasked with investigating the murder, thought the interaction was odd. Most people would be shocked or upset to find their parent brutally murdered on their birthday, explained Carl in a post-trial interview. But I remember Taylor's tone was flat, almost cold, like she wasn't bothered at all. Then there was the laugh when she described her mother laying there bleeding. It set off some alarm bells for sure. When police arrived at 4:42 p.m., Taylor led them to the gruesome scene in the kitchen where they found 41-year-old Susan Sanford face down and lifeless, 10 stab wounds marring her back. Taylor said she believed the murder happened within the last few hours. However, the dried blood underneath the body indicated that the murder had taken place much earlier. Detectives placed the time of death to be around 8 and 9 a.m. Brazenly left near the body was a blood-stained kitchen knife, later confirmed to be the murder weapon. Upon interviewing the neighbors, police also learned of an argument between Taylor and Susan earlier the same morning, sometime between 7:30 and 7:40 a.m. "They were always fighting," 42-year-old neighbor Fred Stan stated. "This morning, we could hear them shouting at each other from clear across the street. It happened so often, though, we didn't pay it any mind." Running a quick background check revealed Taylor had 6 prior arrests, ranging from larceny to aggravated assault, with the earliest arrest occurring when Taylor was just 12 years old. "I've known Susan since our university days," said 41-year-old neighbor Barbara Winfield to detectives. "She was always complaining about Taylor, how her rabbit was always chewing Susan's computer wires, and how Taylor was always getting arrested. I was even up around midnight last night when I heard someone yelling, 'I'll effing kill you.'" After only 30 minutes of questioning neighbors, it had become clear to detectives that Taylor and Susan had a deeply troubled relationship. Taylor absolutely hated her mom. 18-year-old Devin Carson, a teenager who lived down the street, told detectives on the scene. "I'm not surprised by this at all." It appeared to be an open and shut case. A bloody knife, an argument the morning of, and a motive made it clear Taylor had murdered her mother. But before the trial, detectives would make a shocking discovery that turned the city upside down. With the available testimony and evidence found at the scene, police had enough probable cause to arrest Taylor Sanford for the murder of Susan Sanford. Once at the station, Taylor was immediately booked and brought into the interrogation room where detectives Carl Herring and Daryl Parker would try to understand the full story and hopefully secure a confession. It quickly became clear, however, that Taylor had no intention of admitting to the murder. "The first word she said to me when we entered the room," Detective Carl Herring recounted, was, "I didn't fucking do it." I almost laughed. "I told her, we have the knife. People heard you saying you were going to kill her. We know about your arrest records. If you cooperate, we can negotiate a more lenient sentence." Taylor immediately refused the detective's offer, kicking off what would be a 4-hour interrogation. Over the course of the exhaustive interview, Taylor seemed more frustrated by the arrest than upset over the loss of her mother. Detective Daryl Parker recalls, "Innocent people, even ones with strained relationships, eventually break down. It's a shocking, traumatic event that I don't think most of us truly know how we're going to handle until it happens to us. A lot of people cry. Some are angry, but there's always pain behind it. I didn't see that from Taylor." "It was odd," Detective Carl Herring said of Taylor's behavior. "She acted more annoyed than anything." Detectives Carl and Daryl knew if they had any hope of getting the truth from Taylor, they would have to bring down her walls. They probed into Taylor's history with her parents, hoping that they might finally get her to open up emotionally, which ultimately gave them key insights into understanding her demeanor. Taylor described her birthdays as a series of underwhelming moments. Her parents, once enthusiastic celebrants, had abandoned the festivities years ago. "You're not a baby anymore," she recalled her mother, Susan, often saying. Her father, 44-year-old Bill Sanford of the Sanford Law Group, never helped matters. Instead of celebrating, he left her a gift card with a token amount of cash, a meager consolation that only deepened her sense of being a burden. The annual gift became a reminder of her isolation, an obligation he fulfilled just to check a box. Most teenagers might have splurged the money on alcohol or trendy clothes, but Taylor had her own peculiar ritual. Each year, she bought a bread bowl pasta from Domino's, a 2-liter cherry cola, and a Timothy Hay toy for her rabbit Fiver. On Halloween evenings, Taylor and Fiver would huddle together in her bedroom, immersing themselves in a horror movie marathon. Each year, her selections were predictable: Little Shop of Horrors, Rocky Horror Picture Show, and The Happiness of the Katakuris, a bizarre Japanese film she had stumbled upon during an unwanted trip to Osaka. The film had captivated her. Despite the absence of subtitles, the chaotic blend of claymation, music, and absurdity resonated with her. It mirrored her own life, a family navigating horror in search of happiness, a concept she found more illusory than real. Happiness felt like the breath you took just before being submerged in water. A fleeting moment I just couldn't ever grasp, explained Taylor in the post-trial interview with MSNBC. According to Taylor, she woke up around 7:30 a.m., which was unusually early for her. Since she normally did not wake up and leave for school until around 8 a.m., Taylor decided to stay awake and head to the kitchen for breakfast. "I'm always waking up around 8 and just rushing to school," Taylor said in a post-trial interview. "So I figured, it's my birthday, I might as well treat myself to some Count Chocula." But that's when Taylor ran into Susan, who was downstairs brewing a cup of coffee before going to work in her home office. Then, Susan delivered devastating news that would spark the horrific argument the neighbors overheard. "She told me Fiver was dead," Taylor recalled. "I was like, what? And she repeated it like it wasn't a big deal, and that I should just get over it. Fiver had been perfectly healthy. I've had him since I was 8. It didn't make sense that he would suddenly pass away." Taylor was immediately distraught by the news, and suspected Susan may have somehow killed Fiver, either accidentally or intentionally. The accusation quickly erupted into a shouting match between the two, which ended with Taylor storming out of the home and heading to school. Taylor could not recall what time she left, but insisted she did not kill her mother. When questioned about why she laughed on the call, Taylor stated she was laughing because she didn't know how to react to the dispatcher asking how she knew her mom was dead. "It was fucking ridiculous," Taylor said. "I just thought at the time that the question was a waste of time. Like, just send the fucking ambulance." Taylor was taken to Chicago jail for the next few weeks until her father, Bill Sanford, who would be representing Taylor as her attorney, could arrange visitation. The detectives hoped that someone like Bill, a famous attorney, and Taylor's own father, would be able to convince Taylor to take a plea deal and confess to her crime. Taylor still insisted at the time that she was innocent. However, what happened next would change everything. Detective Daryl Parker had an assistant follow up with Taylor's high school to confirm what time she was confirmed to arrive. The private school Taylor attended required all students to sign in and out. While Bill and Taylor were talking, the school finally responded, confirming Taylor signed in at 7:47 a.m. The conditions of the body, as well as the dried blood, indicated that the murder would have taken place between 8 and 9 a.m. Although it was possible that Taylor could have still committed the murder before leaving school, there was another major question the detectives could not answer. Detective Daryl Parker explained, "If Taylor murdered Susan in the kitchen, her clothes would have been covered in blood. The victim was stabbed 10 times and left to die on the floor with no effort to hide the body or clean up. If Taylor did that, what happened to the clothes she was wearing? Investigators found no bloody clothes at the scene, and it was unlikely Taylor would have had time to properly dispose of any stained clothing well enough before arriving at school just 10 minutes later. It was a gaping hole in the detective's case, but there was enough evidence to take to trial and get a conviction. The lack of bloody clothing could be explained away. They were still certain they had their murderer. On November 21, 2023, at the Chicago Corrections Facility, Detectives Carl Herring and Daryl Parker waited outside the interrogation room while Bill spoke with his daughter. After roughly 15 minutes, Bill exited the interrogation room, visibly exhausted and troubled. No one could truly understand or appreciate his unique circumstance, representing his daughter, who happened to be his wife's murderer. It was a miracle he could speak, let alone continue practicing law. When Bill left the room, he looked at Detective Carl Herring and said, "We're ready to take the plea deal. Give her a couple minutes, and we can go back in and write out the confession." This was the big break the detectives were hoping for. "I remember being excited that we got the confession, but also very sad for Bill and his circumstances," Detective Daryl Parker recalled. "I asked him how he managed to stay strong and keep working after all this, and he said something that just completely unraveled everything. Sometimes all you can do is focus on your work and sort out your feelings later, when it's all done. Just like on the day it happened, I just worked morning to night." There was just one problem. Detective Daryl Parker had also confirmed with Bill's administrative assistant, 24-year-old Valerie Mays, at his law firm that he was not in the office that morning. Valerie had said it was unusual at the time because Bill had a meeting with a big client that morning and never missed his meetings without notice. Initially, the detectives overlooked the detail, considering the evidence they had gathered on Taylor. When questioned about this, Bill claimed he forgot he had a doctor's appointment that day and forgot to mention it. The detectives could not corroborate the appointment. In the following weeks, the detectives uncovered a secret affair between Bill and Valerie after investigating Valerie's social media pages. Taylor recalled the feeling on the day of her father's conviction to reporters. "Sometimes we have to go through a little horror to find happiness. I had to find my rabbit dead, and my father is a cheating, murdering psychopath before being able to finally breathe."